Hey everybody, the goal with this video is to talk about politics in the colonies. The chart that you see on this slide shows a pyramid that shows how much power each group of people in the colonies and in England had over the colonies. So you'll see in this chart at the very top we have King George III, and then there's some middle sections, and then there's a large section at the bottom. Our goal with this video is to discuss what each group had power over and how they got that power. Our first person to discuss is at the very top of the pyramid, King George III. He's the only section that only has one person in it, and he is in charge of everything. All political and economic decisions must be approved by him. He is in charge of Great Britain, and that includes everything that happens in the colonies. The next section is Parliament. Parliament, or members of Parliament, live in England. Mostly, for the most part, none of them have ever set foot in the colonies. They don't know what life is like there. They might write letters to people who live in the colonies, but they've never actually been there or lived there. Even though they live in England and they've never been to the colonies, they still make all of the laws for England and for those colonies. And the laws that they make are approved by King George III. Colonial governors, like the man you see here, are appointed by King George III or chosen by King George III. So they will have been from England for the most part, and King George will say, you are now governor of Virginia colony, or South Carolina colony, or Delaware colony. And then they'll be sent over to North America to live in the colonies, and they're essentially like babysitters for the colonies. They're sent over to be the leader of the colony and to watch over the colonists to make sure that they're doing everything they need to do to make King George III happy. In our next section down, the first one we're going to discuss are colonial legislatures. The bottom two sections that we're about to go over are people who are from the colonies, live in the colonies, and have always been in the colonies. So they really understand life in the colonies. This first section, colonial legislatures. A legislature is a group that makes laws. And the three men you see on the screen, Patrick Henry in the top left, Thomas Jefferson in the top right, and George Washington on the bottom, were all members of the Virginia legislature called the House of Burgesses. Colonial legislatures are made up of groups of colonists like these three men, and they gather to make some laws for the colonies. Remember, though, that the governor has to approve of those laws, and the governor was appointed by King George III, so if the governor doesn't think King George would like a law, then it is thrown out and it does not become a law, even if everyone in the colonies wants it. Our next group on this level is property owners, like this man you see here. This is going to be like your large landowners, or maybe a small farmer, or maybe somebody who owns his own blacksmith shop in town. These people are the people who get to vote on who is in the colonial legislature. Only white male property owners had the right to vote in the colonies, and they got to choose who made their laws in the colonial legislatures. They make most of the money and political decisions in the colonies, these property owners. The last level are the women, enslaved Africans, indentured servants, free African Americans, poor farmers, and some artisans. These people, this group, had the least amount of power in the colonies, even though they were the largest group of colonists. Notice how much bigger this section of the pyramid is than, say, King George III, who's one person with the most amount of power. Most of them, could not own land or get an education. So they were kind of at the mercy of what everybody above them in the pyramid decided for them. I hope this was helpful so you get an understanding of the politics between the colonies and Great Britain and who had power over who and who had the most power, which was, of course, King George III.